Hello out there. I am here to do a tutorial on basic theatrical large stage makeup. I'm going to be demonstrating both things that are absolutely vital, like the makeup, but also some tools and some things that I recommend you use during your application process. Now, before you ever even touch makeup, the things that are very important for you to do to prime your skin are to make sure that your face has been thoroughly washed, get any sort of day makeup, grime, anything off of your face. Make sure you use some sort of toner or treatment if you have acne-prone skin, and make sure that you have used some sort of moisturizer. Everybody needs to use moisturizer. Makeup in itself is very drying, but especially the cakey makeup of theatrical use is especially drying, and when your skin gets dried out, it produces more oil to overcompensate and can actually make you break out. So you want to make sure that your skin is perfectly primed. Another thing that can help prevent any sort of skin disasters is to use some sort of primer. Now, it's not absolutely vital. Primers that I recommend, I love all of the Urban Decay primers. This one is brightening, so it actually has a moisturizing element to it. This one, which is pore perfecting, it's a little thicker. And then I also like the Smashbox Photo Finish. This one is hydrating. The normal one is good for everybody, but we're not here to talk about primers. So to begin with, you want to pick a foundation. I personally like the Ben Nye cakes, like everybody else. So what you want to do in terms of color is you want to pick a color that is 1 to 2 shades darker than your skin tone. When you are under the lights, it tends to wash out your natural skin tone. So by adding a bit of warmth to your skin with this, it can actually make you look more normal. What I recommend is using this flat brush. The brush is my personal preference, and then going in afterwards with the sponge, but you can do everything with just everyday sponge. So if you are going to start with the sponge, I do recommend starting with the fat part and using only one side for application and then the other side for blotting. Now I'm going to use the brush for the most part, but I will demonstrate in a minute how to use the sponge. And what you want to do is you really just sort of want to swirl and scoop to get all of the pigment on there, and then you want to really make sure that you get the pigment on. Now initially the goal is to get the makeup on the skin, so it doesn't need to be perfect to begin with, and you can see already that this color here is noticeably different from my neck color, and I promise you on the stage it will look good. And don't worry about any excess, as that will be dealt with momentarily, but you really just want to make sure that you get it everywhere, including your eyelids. You want to make sure that your whole face, under your eyes too. And you'll even see that I blend it a little underneath the jawline. Now if you stop right at the jawline, you sort of create a mask effect where people can see the line. If you cheat it underneath, the shadows of your jawbone will serve as a transition point in order to ensure that it doesn't look artificial. Even though I've applied it all with my brush, with the sponge it is a similar technique. All you do is you scoop and then you just sort of blot it on. But my personal preference is always to not use the sponge for the initial application, because as you can see as I squeeze the sponge here, a lot of product tends to stay in the sponge and not actually get used on your skin, which is a bit of a waste. But not the end of the world, because obviously these cakes are actually quite thick, and even though I've had this one for many years now, It is not empty. Now from here, even though it's not the most glamorous application, what you want to do is take a nice clean sponge and begin to sort of blot it into your skin. And what this will serve as is to sort of blur any imperfections that may be peeking through, as well as any sort of lines that come from your application process, but also to pick up any excess of foundation that may look blotchy or bad later. And you'll see it is picking up quite a bit of product. And if you go in the mirror and you notice, hey, it picked up too much, you can just reapply. It is not a science. It is based off of your own technique and preferences, as well as the preferences of the designers and director. So always make sure you listen to them as well. Now that I have this layer of cream, now is the time to use any other sort of creams that I need for this application. And for theater, as you have now created a completely flat surface from the stage, if you go out just like this, while your skin will look perfect and flawless, it will also look like you don't have a face. So you want to work with highlights and shadows. Now, one option is to use this highlighting cake, as well as using a lighter version of the foundation for your highlight in order to create the same effect. I will be using the highlight cake, but it's up to you. And all you want to do is go along the tops of your cheekbones and create a little bit of dimension. Effectively, anywhere where there would be a high plane, and again, you just want to start by putting the product on and then you can blend it in a moment. Anywhere where you would have a high plane, such as your chin, I like to do a little extra highlighting around the mouth so that way it's easier to see, which I'm sure anybody who is speaking on stage will appreciate. Down the front of your nose. And you can see without doing anything, you're already starting to create that dimension. On your forehead, this is especially important if you have a small forehead like me, and you can see without even blending it, you have this exaggerated highlight where all of a sudden you have all of these different levels coming out at you. And again, you can use the sponge to soften this effect and sort of beat it in. Now you don't want to blend it all over and rub it, but you just want to blot it so that, again, you're picking up the excess. If you move it around too much, you're going to start negating any purpose it had by blending it into nothing. But you do want to blend it a bit. You don't want any sort of super hard lines. Without even putting any sort of shadow into my face, I already have all of these different planes going. Now, if you have any sort of dark circle, red mark, if you just broke out the day before and you want to do any touch-ups to make sure you get extra coverage, that is also good. I personally like this Ben Nye color wheel that is meant as a concealer. And you want to do a slightly lighter color. So one thing that I do like to do, sort of draw out the eyes a bit more, or the eyebrows more specifically, is to go right under this arch here with some concealer or some highlight or your lighter foundation, whatever you want. So that way you can see a bit more of the eyebrow, so especially if you have a character that's making a lot of expressions with his eyebrows, but everybody sort of talks with their eyebrows, so nice and good and even. If you've chosen to do a darker foundation for your contour, now would be the time to put the cream on. But I personally have used a powder. So what you want to do is once you get the cream all good and on your face, you want to take a powder and a powder puff. The powder that I choose to use for theatrical use is this Ben Nye. The powder here is the neutral set, so it is theoretically colorless once it is set and blended properly on your face, but they do have light, medium, and dark if you want to get something a little more specially tailored. It's a matter of preference. And then what you want to do is take your powder puff, get the powder in there, and then really work it into the powder. And it's going to seem like you're using a lot of powder and you're going to think, oh no, I've used too much. There's no such thing. This powder step is also one of the reasons it is imperative to not actually be wearing your costume before you apply makeup, or to make sure that if you do wear your costume that you have a lot of towels, paper towels, whatever, because powder is going to get everywhere. And the only time that you should do makeup after wearing a costume is if you have some sort of turtleneck or it's especially tight and it's going to rub up against your face. Otherwise, just do your makeup beforehand and it'll all work out. And so once you've gotten it all worked out, it's going to sort of look cartoony, but just a lot of powder. And it's going to seem like way too much, but you go in afterwards with this brush and wipe it all away. And you can see that even though I had that giant massive powder on my face, the makeup and the oils on my face only absorbed what was absolutely necessary. And the rest isn't even sticking to my face, and you can just sort of touch and it'll have this sort of smooth matte feel. And all you want to do is use a nice big fluffy powder brush. So one thing you will notice is that once you have finished dusting away all of the powder with your powder brush, a lot of the very dramatic look has sort of faded, so you may need to layer more as the stage gets bigger or as it is needed. But before we go there, now that we are all primed with our powder, we can now use our powder-based products, such as my personal contouring color as well as the blushes. So to start with, I'm going to work with the contouring. The one that I have is a powder. It's actually a bronzer, but you can use either a darker than skin tone foundation, you can use a bronzer, there's actual Ben Nye contouring colors, it's all up to you. So the powder, what you want to do is take, I personally like this brush, you can use an angled bronzing brush, you can use a blush brush, you can use a fan brush, whatever makes you more comfortable. And what you want to do is really get and find your features and then just go along it. So here I'm just going along my cheekbone, and it's almost like, if you think about it, like a Halloween makeup where you're making yourself look like a vampire or a zombie and making yourself look really gaunt. but just go in and create that sharpness, so that way from far away people will see that shadow and interpret it as your cheekbone to sort of give that definition in your face. And then what you want to do, even if you're a woman, is go underneath this jaw, because as you can see with the more definition, you can see more of the movement as I talk. And being able to recognize that movement from the stage is extraordinarily helpful if you are speaking or singing or making any sort of noise where you want the audience to recognize it too. And just really go under here and follow along. You don't really want to change the shape so much as just really add some more definition. So from afar, you'll see a lot of that definition and movement. And now from here, over the top of your contouring, you want to lay a blush. I personally am going to be using this Latte, so it's a little bit darker for a little bit more of a dramatic. If you want something subtler or more feminine, I do also have this lighter pink color. And blush is really up to character and designers and director. So what I have is just a powder brush, not a specific blush brush, but I personally like the shape it gives me. Again, it's up to your discretion. You can use the angled fan, an actual blush brush. And what you want to do, unlike with street makeup, you don't want to go up into the actual cheekbone. Again, you're creating more of that definition. So you're actually going underneath and almost going over, well, not almost, you are going over the top of your contouring to create more of this effect. I personally like to then blend it with the powder. You just need to be very, very careful when you're done to not keep it. So you see, it is a very dramatic look, but you want more dramatic because that is what will register to people from afar. It's just creating, again, all of that definition. So from here, and you can do either your blush color or your contouring. I'm going to be using my contouring color. I personally like to use these smudgy brushes. You can use any eyeshadow brush. Some people do use their finger. If you're a beginner, I don't recommend it, and especially not if you're sharing. A lot of the oils from your hands can get onto and ruin your effect. And then what you want to do is just create this definition underneath your brow here. So you create this separation between your eyelid and this eyebrow plane up here. And what a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of emotion is read through the eyebrows, not necessarily the eyes themselves. So to create that definition, and if you remember from before, you have that highlight up there as well, makes it that much easier to go ahead and recognize, so you can get more of that eyebrow movement from afar. Plus you'll be able to see your eyes, so especially if you're doing more of the theatrical effects of looking, it'll be easier for people to register where you're looking and register more subtle movements from afar with this definition. And now you have your options between eyeliners from there. You can use a liquid, you can use a pencil, you can use more of a kohl stick, it's up to you. And what you want to do, I'm going to be using the pencil. Now you don't want to grab and pull on the eye all that much because it will create a wrinkle in your skin in the future. But all you want to do is go along this lash line, and you can do one long stroke and then fix it up later, or you can do short strokes. I'm going to show you the short strokes because I feel like that is easier to deal with for beginners, and just sort of create that definition. And you don't have to use black. I personally use black because of my eyelashes and eyebrows being black, but you can use brown. Or more fun colors such as green, blue, purple, red as your character calls for it. But just for a basic, you probably want to stick to either a brown or a black. And you can already see there's a big difference between the definition of my eye. And you definitely want to line underneath as well. And what I like to do is cheat out slightly from the lash line. So don't go exactly along the lash line on the bottom. And from up close, you'll look a little like Baby Jane Hudson, but that's okay. So that way you get the appearance of a larger eye that can be read from further away. And you can even see the difference between, even with the subtle contouring, my eyes are still sort of lost. You need to create that definition so people can tell the difference between the whites of your eyes and the plane of your eyelid. And just cheat it out ever so slightly. And if you want to go really dramatic, you can really cheat that, and then with a white eyeliner pencil, you can draw inside of that to create a new white, and then put fake eyelashes along that line, so from afar it really gives that very doll-like effect. And then on top of this, for men and women, I do recommend curling and using mascara. For women, fake lashes may be a good option, which I can cover in a separate tutorial. But all you want to do with this is just open your eyes really wide to begin with and sort of scoop all the lashes in there, and then you don't want to go exactly at the root because that may pull lashes out, and then just sort of squeeze and curl so you get it out and away, and then you grab a mascara. Again, I'm choosing black because my lashes are black, but you can choose a brown if you would like. And really get it on there. And if you've really cheated it out of your lash line, you do not want to do any on your lower lashes, but if you only slightly, get it just on the edges to create some more of that definition. And you can see even that adds a sort of open up the lashes. And you want to make sure you don't sneeze or blink really hard or anything, because then you'll get those little lines of mascara underneath that you'll then have to clean up. And since you will at this point be wearing quite a bit of makeup, it's probably not the best thing for you to have to take it off and start again, even with patchwork. So that'll do it for the eyes. Now for the lips, the natural lip color from Ben Nye, as well as Spice in the lip colored pencil that came with my basic kit. Now, men and women need to wear lipstick with liner. Liner is very important because it keeps lipstick from bleeding, but again, you want to make sure that people can see the definition in your mouth. And if you've done the full face, at this point you really won't get all that much definition in your mouth from afar. Now for me, in particular, this is a bit of a dark color. You want to find something that looks natural, but it is going to be more of a pop than you would see in day-to-day life. Again, a lot of it washes out with the lights. So what you want to do with the liner is just start by creating your little edge here. And unless it's really necessary, don't deviate too far from your natural line. You're just trying to add definition, not necessarily adding shape or volume. Now, if the character calls for it, you could stop with the liner at this point, but when you put the lipstick on, you will see a distinct line between your liner and your lipstick. So, unless the character specifically calls for it, from there you want to fill in the entire lip so that it almost looks like you're already wearing lipstick, and this will create a nice little base for your lipstick. Now, I personally recommend using a lip brush even if you have a lipstick, just because it tends to give you a little more control, allows you to keep in the lines a little easier. And again, same just sort of swirl technique you do with any sort of cream. And just take it and lay it along the top. Now, if you are sharing a color with somebody else, you do not want to dip directly into this pot, but instead to take a small scoop of it and then go from there. Because you will need to dip multiple times to really get this color on. And make sure you've really got it, so now you can really see the lip color. And again, you can go this dramatic, you can go even more dramatic with reds or bright colors, or you can go more subtle, but you do want to create a distinction to make sure that people can see your lips when you are talking or singing or whatever it is you're doing. Even expressing, being able to see the mouth open and closed is vital in a theatrical performance. Now from there, once you have the color set up, you want to take a tissue like this and you want to lay it in between your lips, because otherwise you can get lipstick on your teeth, and unless that is a thing that is specifically called for in the script, you don't necessarily want it. And you're just going to lay it and then lay the tissue over the top of your lips. A lot of people have a tendency to full on blot and press the tissue against their lips, and you don't want to do that. All you're doing is picking up any excess that may potentially bleed later. So you see, I'm not picking up that much pigment, but you really want to pick up any excess from the inside of that lip line. Otherwise you will get lipstick all over your teeth. And that is your basic character face. As you can see, it is very dramatic from up close, but if you look at it from afar, it begins to look more like a normal, average face. There is some deviation that you can make or take, but for the most part, this is going to be your basic template. Just make sure that you are able to be seen from whatever size theater you are. If you are in a larger scale theater, you may need to go bigger with this makeup just to have a normal face, and if you're in a smaller scale theater, you may need to, well, you'll definitely need to tone it back so that way people don't think that it's a drag show. But otherwise you can see it's really just a matter of definition, not so much of beauty or glamour, but just evening out the skin tone, creating definition in the cheekbones so you can see the face in all of its different planes, creating some sort of definition for the mouth, definition for the jaw, definition for the eyes.